So my name is Father Philip Larrey. I have been a professor of logic and epistemology at the Pontifical Lateran University for over 20 years in Rome. And I recently accepted a position of teaching at Boston College with the Jesuits at the Lynch School of Formative Education. I'll be teaching an interdisciplinary course on technology, artificial intelligence, and philosophical presuppositions of that. And then in the fall, I'll be teaching 2 courses in philosophy, which would be more conventional, more traditional. I'm also chairman of the Humanity 2.0 Foundation, which is an organization, a nonprofit organization centered around the concept of human flourishing. And in other words, what do human beings require in order to flourish? Flourishing is also synonymous of self-realization, of maximizing one's potential, of becoming what one truly can become and wants to become. And we're working closely with the program of human flourishing at Harvard University. Just yesterday, I was on a call with the director, Tyler Vanderbilt, amazing person, and some people at Notre Dame, and also the Christian Relief Service. They have I'm on their advisory council for human dignity, respect for human dignity. I have written several books on new technologies, and the most recent one is called Artificial Humanity, in which I try to probe what are the philosophical implications of artificial intelligence. I am a firm believer that we cannot speak about the philosophical implications of AI unless we do so within a certain framework. Many people in Silicon Valley are now reaching out to people in the Vatican, like Archbishop Paglia, Archbishop Tai, Father Paolo Benatti, and myself. And they're asking philosophical questions. For example, what is the nature of the human being? Another example is the relationship between the mind and the body. Another question that they're asking is the nature of consciousness. What is consciousness? We all know it when we see it, but it's very difficult to identify the exact meaning of consciousness. And David Chalmers, the famous philosopher and neuroscientist, calls consciousness the hard problem. The hard problem meaning we don't have an adequate definition from a philosophical point of view of consciousness. So when I say that we need to have a framework in order to talk about these issues, I'm referring to my own framework, which is Aristotelian Thomistic, and that is the philosophical framework of the Catholic tradition. The Catholic tradition is rich with philosophical frameworks. They're from St. Augustine on up until today. There are many currents of thought that can help us identify the issues that we want to discuss, especially with software engineers and CEOs of large companies, large tech companies. Mm. I think that the Aristotelian Thomistic framework is an excellent framework in which to identify the issues that many people want to talk about today. Let me give a very brief example. Aquinas distinguishes between external senses and internal senses. And so we have 5 external senses. We all know what those are, and those are pretty easy to identify. And reality is assimilated by human beings through the 5 senses, which later pass on to the intellect through the internal senses, data from the outside world. So the first internal sense is the common sense. It's not common sense in the normal in the normal understanding, but it's a very technical term in Aquinas. And it is the internal sense which unifies all of the data from the external senses. So hearing, seeing, feeling, touching, breathing, smelling. Then the intellect passes that on to the fantasy, which is the imagination, and that is what Aquinas calls the spatial dimension of the data, and then passes on to the memory, which gives the temporal dimension to the data. Now, I know this is a little bit technical, but Trevor, you asked for it, so you're going to get it. Now, why do I insist on the Thomistic reading of what happens in perception? It's because those three internal senses are all based on the physical brain. So we have the common sense, which unifies the data. We have the imagination, and then we have the memory. So spatial temporal dimension of understanding is physical in nature. So when I speak with the software engineers in Silicon Valley, and they're all thinking about immortality, they're thinking about mind uploading, they're thinking about preserving the mind in some sort of cloud or some sort of hard disk or hard drive. What I tell them is that from a philosophical point of view, we can do that to certain things that occur in the mind. For example, the spatial temporal dimension of understanding. But once it reaches the abstract level, which is what they're really interested in, like reasoning and abstract thought and universal concepts, Aquinas says no, because that is not based on the physical brain. That is something spiritual. Well, let's not use that term because it could be misunderstood. It is non-physical. It is non-physical. So I say to Demis Hassabis, who is the CEO of DeepMind, or I say to Jean LeCun, who is the AI expert at Facebook, or even Mark Zuckerberg, who came to Rome 3 years ago with his wife Priscilla. I say, we can help you from a software point of view. We can help you identify what are those objects of the mind that can actually be harnessed with a digital support, but the other aspects cannot because they are non-physical. And I think this is, I hope I wasn't too obtuse, but I think this is an example of how a philosophical framework can help us understand exactly how to frame the questions that the software engineers are asking us today. Artificial intelligence is the term that we use to describe algorithms that utilize logical calculations in order to achieve programmable results. So when I say algorithms, I'm referring to the software. As any programmer knows, there are all kinds of instructions, and it was actually due to the philosophers of logic of the 20th century, like Bertrand Russell and W.B. Quine, that gave us the capacity for a Turing machine. A Turing machine is simply a machine that uses logical language in order to make calculations. And so there was actually a theoretical concept in the 1930s, and then a couple of guys at Stanford University built a machine with levers and tapes, and it was all very practical, which actually realized and were able to achieve logical calculations. You asked me how I got involved. Well, I teach epistemology, or I have taught epistemology for many, many years, and that is the study of how we know. What is knowledge? And in a very early stage in the 1990s, I understood that machines, in a sense, were going to be identified as understanding. So a machine understanding, or what was coined by John McCarthy at Dartmouth in 1956, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is simply the logical calculations that a machine can do in order to achieve a conclusion, in order to arrive at a conclusion. The idea was if I could look at the way a machine does this stuff, it will enlighten how a human does this stuff. And I think in 1956, it was the famous Dartmouth Symposium in New Hampshire. John McCarthy, I feel, made a big mistake, and he called this artificial intelligence because what a machine does is not intelligence at all. It is simply statistical calculations, which are very, very fast. Please don't get me wrong. I oftentimes say that machines are stupid. And when I say machines are stupid, I don't mean that they're not fast and they're not capable of achieving results that are vastly beyond what we're capable of doing, and that their accuracy is much higher than human beings. I grant that all to the machines, but a machine doesn't know anything. That's the point. So now we're talking about machine learning. We're talking about machine understanding. We're even talking about machine consciousness. And I think those are inappropriate terms. And I think that many people in the industry are beginning to see today that we should change the vocabulary. Artificial intelligence is pretty much stuck. We can't really, I don't think we can do without it anymore. But Trevor, remember what the human brain, or let's say the human mind, and Aquinas would use the word intellect. What the human intellect does is much different than what a machine does. For many years, artificial intelligence experts were bent on imitating the human mind. And so they were training the algorithms according to the nature of the human mind. Around the year 2005, 2006, thanks also, I believe, to certain philosophers like John Searle and Hilary Putnam, the programmers began to say, let's ignore the nature of human intelligence and let's deal with the machine on its own terms. And that is when we had an exponential increase in the power of artificial intelligence. And that's when I became very, very interested in the subject. And I started reading a lot of books by Ray Kurzweil, who is currently an engineer for Google, and other people who were working on AI. I became friends with Demis Hassabis. I reached out to Sam Altman once ChatGPT came out. I was able to attend a meeting in Silicon Valley in March with Cardinal Peter Turkson, run by Raz Askin and Tristan Harris, who are the two authors of the movie The Social Dilemma. The Social Dilemma. And when I speak with Sam Altman, he's very down to earth. He's very happy to speak with people in the Vatican. Our last conversation was kind of funny because I said, Sam, what is, okay, we talk about philosophy because Sam is very smart, obviously. I said, Sam, what is your greatest concern about ChatGPT? Because they're on version 4 now, but he's already almost finished version 5. And he said, Father, version 5 is a lot better than version 4. And if you want, we can get into that also. But I said, Sam, what's your greatest concern? He says, my greatest fear about ChatGPT is that it can be used in the wrong hands in a detrimental way. And I remember I jumped out of my seat and I said, Sam, you can't just tell me that with a straight face and not do anything. I mean, everybody's worried about that. At the end of the pandemic, I think this was about 3 years ago, I visited some friends in Jacksonville, Florida. And during the time I was there, the Colonial Pipeline was hacked by a Russian kid in St. Petersburg. And what he did was plant a malware in the servers of the Colonial Pipeline. and encrypted the entire system, so that the user, or so that the owners of the pipeline were no longer able to access it. Now we're talking about the largest distributor of gasoline in the United States. It runs from Florida to Maine, okay? And it passes through Virginia, New York, Boston. And I remember it when I was in Jacksonville, looking at the lines of cars waiting to get gas. It's just miles. They were piling up because people were rationing the gas because the pipeline was closed. It was to all effects closed. And the Russian hacker, demanded a $10 million ransom in Bitcoin, and then he would give the power back to the original owners of the servers. And I don't know how many hundreds of servers he infected with this malware. Now, the FBI actually tracked the money, and they found out who he was, and they got most of the money back. But sorry, I needed the details so that you understand where I'm going on this, Trevor. So this paralyzed the East Coast for like 3 days, and they ended up paying the ransom because they needed to get the activity back on track. What if an AI decided to do something like that? What if an AI decided to do something like that? What if an AI decided to find out what the nuclear weapon codes are for the United States? What if an AI, and they're it's not easy to do. I understand that very well. They're very well protected, and they're offline completely because the generals know that this is the most secure thing that you can have in the United States, and to launch a nuclear weapon, it has to be absolutely secure. And even nuclear power plants are offline. They're not allowed to be online. So there's a physical barrier. You can't hack a nuclear power plant. It's impossible. Well, actually, we did it to the Iranians. If you want, I can tell you about that too. But so what if in Nevada there's a huge reservoir that stores most of the water for the state. What if an AI decided to release some sort of toxic agent into the reservoir and kill literally millions of people? And that is actually possible today, Trevor. I don't want to scare you, but the AIs can actually make that happen. An AI, what it would do is it would deliver a package from Federal Express. So it says FedEx, you need to FedEx me this medicine or this liquid from, I don't know, the Center of Disease Control in Atlanta, which is the biggest one in the whole world. And the people will do it. It's all automatic. They'll put it in a FedEx box and they'll ship it to Nevada. And then the AI will tell someone to open it, put it into the water. Now, I know this sounds like science fiction. I know this sounds like doomsday and apocalyptic, but it's possible. That's the thing. It's possible, Trevor. And that is why Sam Altman is the first to say we need regulatory oversight about AI. Elon Musk said the same thing to the senators. Almost everybody, Nadella said no, because there's a fight going on at Microsoft between Brad Smith, who is very close to the Vatican, and the president of Microsoft, and Nadella, who's the CEO, and he's looking at the bottom line. And then they just gave Sam $10 billion to develop ChatGPT. So the market incentive is incredibly strong, but almost everyone in the industry realizes there has to be regulation. There has to be either self-regulation, which is what the industry is doing now, right? Or government regulation, which is going to take a long time. And plus, frankly, Trevor, I don't think the government knows enough about the technology to regulate. If you listen to the transcripts of Sam Altman appearing in May, I think it was in May, he appeared to the Senate hearing. What you saw was a group of grown men who are very good at making laws and understanding legislation, but who have almost no idea about the technology. And so Sam, in very plain words, he's trying to explain this. It's not easy to explain when you're talking about algorithms and generative protocols and and software and things like that. They're just the two worlds like that. Two worlds that don't meet. So I think Senator Schumer, what he's trying to do is bring these two worlds together so that we can form some sort of guidelines. In Europe, the European Parliament passed a law called the AI Act, which will take 18 months to be implemented. And it's very well done, I think, but I think it has some shortcomings. Let me just give you one. And Sam complained about this when I asked him. I said, well, have you seen the European Commission AI Act? Oh, yeah, I've seen it. And what do you think? And he says, well, it will probably mean that ChatGPT will not be able to be used in Europe. And I said, why? He says, because one of the items that they're requiring of us is full transparency. Now, what the European Commission means by full transparency is that a user like Trevor that goes on ChatGPT and says, I don't know what was your recent search? Why did McCarthy no longer is Speaker of the House or whatever? Okay, so you ask ChatGPT something or what's the definition of a black hole or who is Stephen Hawking? Okay, so it gives you the answer. Well, the user should be able to tell how the answer was given. And Sam comes back saying, and he's already fought with the European Commission, by the way. Sam comes back saying, we don't even know how it comes up with the answer. That's the whole point. It's generative. It's finding its answer on its own. So if the European Commission demands full transparency, which means you can trace exactly how the answer is arrived at, well, you probably can't do that. Now, a good friend of mine lives in Malta, and he has an AI company, and he says, well, we can get around that. And what he says is that we have a cause and effect relationship. So if you want input, output, and so you input the question, who is Stephen Hawking? And then you have the output, a famous astrophysicist who died and whatever. So the machine can tell you the relationship between the input and the output. It just can't tell you all the steps. And frankly, I hope that's enough. I hope that's enough to say, okay, the machine is being transparent, and we'll let that be used in Europe. Sam has warned the European Commission that if they don't change the wording on the AI Act, and I think they actually will, he will have to prevent ChatGPT being used in Europe. Now, the Europeans don't want that to happen because they understand they'll be at a huge disadvantage. So it's almost like an arms race. You've got China, they're inventing their own ChatGPT. You've got Russia, you've got the United States, and then you have Europe. I think those are the top nations that are working on this technology. So just imagine that the Europeans are banned, essentially. I mean, that there's going to be a huge detrimental effect for the Europeans. So I think they're going to have to change the wording. Just look at the meeting between Senator Schumer and all these tech people, the tech gurus, the tech giants of the United States. He's asking them, help us to come up with the right guidelines, help us to come up with the right laws. And I think that is the winning edge. So Elon Musk is in the room. Sam Altman, they don't like each other, as you probably know, because they started OpenAI together, and then 2018 Elon left, and now has started his own AI company called X. That's actually X.AI, and that's why he's renaming Twitter X, because he believes it's going to be an AI company. Tesla is basically an AI company. Yeah, sure, the batteries and this electric car, but those cars are robots. I mean, those cars, they can fully drive themselves. Elon doesn't want that because of the legal ramifications, but a Tesla can be fully automatic, fully self-driving. There has to be a driver in the driver's seat. They have to have his hands on the steering wheel, but they can basically drive themselves. So I think Elon is going to come out with something really cool within a couple months. I think Google also, because Google has combined DeepMind, which is their British AI program, with the Brain Project, which is in Pasadena, California, I believe, or in Mountain View. Which, by the way, I was born in Mountain View, Treasure. That's people think that's kind of funny. Oh gosh, we've got an AI priest who was actually born in Mountain View. When I was born there, it wasn't Silicon Valley at all. It was a depressed county of San Francisco. And now, if you're not a millionaire, you can't afford to live there. It's just the cost of living is too high. So the Bard is the Google AI that's I don't think they're as good as ChatGPT, and I think ChatGPT number 5, which is probably going to come out within a year or so, is going to improve a lot on ChatGPT 4. For example, we have the problem of hallucinations. Hallucinations is a technical term when ChatGPT makes up stuff that it doesn't know. So you ask it a question and it doesn't know the answer, it will make one up, and that's terrible. So because you don't know if it's true or false, right? And this is one of the limits. And Sam knows this. He says, well, at least we're getting it out there. Most of the time, it's correct because they use statistical calculations. And let's say, who won the NBA championship in 1993? Now, I personally know that because it was my favorite player of all time, Michael Jordan. That was his three-peat. That was the third championship he won, 91, 92, and 93. So I don't need ChatGPT to tell me the Chicago Bulls won the NBA championship in 1993, but you could ask it. You could look it up, and statistically, it will come back with Chicago Bulls. Now, it could be wrong. It could be wrong, but it probably won't be, just because of the overwhelming evidence of what the right answer is. So Pope Francis has decided to make the World Day of Peace, January 1st, 2024. The theme of that World Day of Peace is going to be artificial intelligence, the ethics of AI. He also announced that the World Day for Communications will have AI as its fundamental theme. And it's on his radar. I mean, Pope Francis has many other priorities. Ecological, climate change. He just authored the new encyclical, like the second part of Laudate Si, which talks about climate change and ecological, how can I say this? Taking care of nature, taking care of God's creation. The war in Ukraine is one of his priorities. Immigration, he's always speaking about people dying in the Mediterranean. It's a terrible tragedy that happens every day, and we don't hear about it so much in the States. But if you live in Italy, you certainly hear about a lot of it. Inequality, justice for the poor. These are Pope Francis's priority. We all know that. But he's now making artificial intelligence one of his priorities, and especially the ethical dimension of AI. So I think that's kind of cool. So my opinion is, let's use it. Like Matthew Sanders, who came up with Magisterium AI. Anything you want to know about the church, like what is a conclave, or when did the law of celibacy happen in the church? I mean, because Matthew has taught the AI according to official Catholic documents. So for Catholics and non-Catholics alike, Magisterium AI is a great tool, because you're always going to get the right answer. Magisterium AI doesn't have the internet as its source. It has very small, very critical and very well selected documents that deal with the official teaching of the Catholic Church. So that the Catechism of the Catholic Church and the encyclicals of the Pope. He even has homilies, for example. Some of my priest friends are using it to write their homilies. But whatever. And use it for what good comes out of it. Don't be afraid of these technologies. They're not going to harm us unless we want them to. They're not going to take over the world like, in Matrix or Terminator, unless we give the power to the machines to do that. Now, I'm quite optimistic, and I think that as a Catholic community, we should continue learning and dialoguing with the people who are inventing this stuff. And because you're absolutely right, Trevor, it changes week by week. It really is difficult to keep up with this stuff. I kind of have made that my own challenge. I want to be able to speak the language these people are speaking. I want to know what the technology can do. And people like Matthew Sanders help me out, doing that. Or Ron Ivey, who's in charge of the Institute of Humanity 2.0. I'm continually getting links and updates, and I'm fortunate enough to get on the phone with people like Sam and others. So be aware. Use the tools in a critical, how can I say this, thinking critically, because that's exactly what epistemology teaches us, to think critically. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, because fear is never useful. But be aware of what they're calling the alignment issue now. That's a new term that just came out last month. Alignment means, how can we make sure that the AIs are aligned with the purposes of humanity? And that's not easy, because AIs can change their programs. They can change the what they want to achieve. They can go out on the internet and get routines and get subroutines and get programs that they incorporate into their own program, and they become more powerful. So there is a point in which the AIs and the big platforms like Google, OpenAI, and Facebook and whatnot, there's going to be a point in which the AIs are going to be much more advanced than human intellects. That's a given. Goldman Sachs came out with a report saying within the next 5 years, 300 million jobs will be lost. I disagree with that. I don't think it will be that quick. I think jobs will be lost due to AI, but I think it will be much more in the future. I say maybe 20 or 30 years from now. And I think that it will happen slowly enough so that people can get reskilled and find another job. But I tell my students all the time, I say, don't invest your time and your education in jobs which can be done by a machine. And those are repetitive, mechanical, that don't take a lot of thought. Or now we're getting, with AIs, we're getting to things like lawyers, or even people who work on the stock exchange. I mean, the New York Stock Exchange is basically run by AIs. It's not run by human beings. They're not fast enough. These transactions are made within nanoseconds, according to statistics. You say, well, when the price of YouTube gets to a point, buy 100 million shares or sell 1,000 shares or something like that. It's getting to a point where the rhythm is so fast a human being can't keep up. So we entrust that to an AI. And here's the second problem. So the first problem is alignment. Are we sure that AIs are going to be aligned with our goals and purposes? And I'm not sure on that. Right now they are, because we're in control. So here's the second point: who's in control? Now, right now we are, and the people who are making these products will tell you, especially Demis Hassabis, who's a brilliant man. He has 3 lead articles in Nature magazine in the past 6 years, which is incredible. I mean, I don't think there are any other authors who have 3 lead articles in Nature. Nature magazine is the most prestigious scientific journal in the world, and he has 3. And so because of the AI that he developed. So Demis says, right now, we have complete control over our AI, which is called DeepMind. Okay, um, that might change. That might change, and the tendency is to allow the AI more and more. Um, how can I say autonomy, because they are faster, they're more accurate, and they can deal with databases which are huge that humans can't even fathom at all. So the tendency is to give the AI more and more autonomy. Well, we have to be careful, because at a certain point, we're going to give all of our control over to the AI, and that's not good. That nobody wants that to happen. So if you like, I can give you another small example. I've interviewed several generals over the past years, and how the military is using AI, and especially if you look at the war in Ukraine, the drones. A lot of these drones are driven by AI. Well, the generals say that they do not allow the drones to be autonomous, that they need to have control over the targets and the firepower and everything. So, because we have autonomous drones, they'll what's the term? They'll take off, they'll hit their target, and they'll land all on their own without any human intervention whatsoever. The generals say, no, 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 no. The drones are completely controlled by us. So again, it's not a good thing to talk about drones, killing people and hurting people, but most of the fighting going on in Ukraine is between drones. So it's like machines fighting machines. Still, lives are being lost, obviously, but the increased use of drones, some would say, "Oh, we're having the machines do warfare." Well, no, they're under the controls of the generals. So I think there's a lesson to be learned there. If military generals don't want to give autonomy to the AIs, which they could. The technology is certainly there, not only from the U.S., but Russia is buying drones from Iran. Iran has a very sophisticated industry of drones, and so does Israel. But Israel is not giving arms to Russia, obviously. But they could. I think they could sell them. But I don't, because. But I don't want to get into the politics. But. The takeaway is, let's be cautious about how much autonomy we leave to the artificial intelligence.